pain, suffering. Kenshi, the brutal squad-based RPG set in a post-apocalyptic world. A typical start in Kenshi is usually just some guy waking up in some town. However, this is not going to be a typical start. Instead of just one guy, we are starting with 100 guys, in the middle of the Great Desert, with no gear, money, or limbs. Yes, 100 torsos. To make this even more spicy, I won't be able to hire anyone with limbs, or to reload a save game if something goes wrong. Well, we better get crawling. Our destination was Heft, a nearby city that had a robotics shop. This shop sells robotic limbs, which we could use to replace our missing limbs. To get there, we would have to cross the Great Desert while dodging its various threats, such as giant man-eating cricket things called skimmers, rebel farmers, random homeless people, and of course, labor requisition specialists. Like freshly hatched baby turtles, we had absolutely no defense from anything, and the quicker we got to Heft, the better our chances are. After an entire day and night of crawling, we were closing in on Heft, and could even see it clearly in the distance. However, a nearby skimmer also saw us clearly and decided it was breakfast time. Thankfully, it must have been on a diet and left after munching on only 5 torsos. Truly, a great start and a good omen. Not long after, we saw more skimmers flying some rebel farmers, and started crawling over, hoping to snag some much-needed loot. However, by the time we crawled over, they were not all dead and actually quite pissed off. One farmer even decided to stab a torso to death, only to moments later get ripped into pieces by the remaining skimmers. After making sure the coast was actually clear this time, our torsos descended like vultures, stripping everything they could from the battlefield. We got quite a lot of stuff, at least for a bunch of limbless poor people. After regrouping, we continued towards Heft. By the break of dawn on the 3rd day, we had made it to the city gates. Surprisingly enough, we had only lost 6 torsos on the trip over, a much lower casualty rate than I expected. Once inside the city, we immediately set up camp and headed over to the city's robotics shop to pawn off the gear we had scavenged, which would hopefully give us enough money to purchase legs for at least 1 torso. Amazingly enough, it did, and we purchased 2 legs. Behold, our first upright torso. However, we still had 93 more torsos requiring limbs, and without any arms we could not actually do anything. So, I tried stealing some limbs from the boxes in the store and actually got another torso upright with 2 legs. No arms though. With 2 walking torsos, I decided to try an old tactic of baiting bandits or monsters into the city guards. It took a little while, but by nightfall I had managed to kite some bandits into the city gate and watched as the guards dispatched them. Once the bandits were down, we stripped their gear and sold it at the robotics store. With this, we had enough money to purchase an arm. This is where things start to get sneaky. With an arm, we could lockpick the metal chest that was storing the robotic limbs and liberate them for our cause. This sure as hell beat buying them since they cost a ton of money, which we just didn't have. By the morning of day 5, we had liberated enough limbs for 2 more torsos. We sent them off to mine copper ore, which we would sell to generate an income. I was planning on using this income to purchase a membership with the Shinobi Thieves, which would cost 10,000 cats. It was expensive, but this would give us access to their tower and their services, the most important one being the fence, which would allow us to safely pawn off liberated goods. Towards the end of day 5, we had enough money for the membership, and just in time too. I had sent one of the torsos into the robotics store and cleared out some repair kits, which I proceeded to sell to the fence for a good payout. While we were messing around at the robotics store and trying to do some money raising, an unprecedented humanitarian crisis was taking hold back at the torso camp. You see, our torsos had been eating sand for breakfast and sleep for dinner. However, recent groundbreaking research performed by top experts led to a startling discovery. Sand has no actual nutritional value, and sleep only slows down hunger. In layman's terms, we're starving. This was a major issue, as the price of food could be measured in car payments, paired with the fact that we had about 90 torsos to feed. The cost of feeding the entire camp of torsos would be colossal, and I figured the best way to fund it would be the mass liberation of resources from the city's stores. This, however, was a mistake, and led to most of our limb torsos getting their asses beaten and thrown into jail. Well, shit. Well, at least this little kerfuffle wasn't without its upsides. You see, I noticed something strange was going on in this town. Most of the shops and stores had guards that would easily detect and beat the living shit out of anyone that tried stealing from them. You would also need to fence the items off or risk being caught selling stolen goods. But the robotics store? No guards. The shopkeeper would just warn us if we got caught. and we could even sell goods stolen from the robotics store without a fence. No one seemed to care. Why was this happening? Well, I suppose that the robotics store shopkeeper is actually a secret supporter of our torso struggle, or is committing insurance fraud. Anyway, one torso did manage to avoid an ass beating and make it outside the city. I decided to send them on a scouting mission to find a location to build an outpost. Kenshi has a city builder aspect to it, allowing us to build our very own torso civilization. Getting an outpost going would allow us space for farms, which could provide a permanent solution to our food problem. Heck, with enough time and investment, we could even begin building our own weapons, armor, and even limbs. The catch is outposts are pretty expensive, time-consuming, and require technology that we have to research. They also tend to get attention from bandits and the local factions, usually not the good kind. While our scout torso was looking for a base location, our recently arrested torsos were released from jail. I decided to purchase a storm house in town to kickstart research for our outpost project. We build a basic research bench, load it with science books, and assign a torso to thinking very hard. Getting the outpost going would take time, and during that time I would have to figure out the hunger problem. The solution I came up with is this: strip clean the robotics store every chance I get. I would use the limbs from my torsos and would sell the repair kits across the street at the same bar I would buy food from. This would both reduce the number of unproductive torsos to feed as well as provide a steady source of income. With this income, I would send a torso with a bag to the bar, purchase as much food as they could hold, and then hand it out to the hungriest torsos. I would have to do this several dozen times over this playthrough, and I would have to manually do all of it. On the morning of day 8, our scout torso had finally found a good spot to build an outpost, a lovely little hillside by the seashore. It had decent fertility for farming, alright access to water for a desert, and an abundance of iron and copper for industrial needs. With the prospecting done, I started designing a basic outpost, placing blueprints for a stone mine and a stone processor to produce our own building materials, a storm house for shelter, and a few basic farm plots, as well as some wells for water. I had actually sent our scout torso back into Heft on the evening of day 7 and had brought some basic building materials, which would cover the cost of at least the storm house. For everything else, we would have to import the materials to build it, but once that initial investment was made, we would be able to produce our own building materials. This, however, was a little tricky, you see. The desert between our outpost and Hef was pretty dangerous, and our scout torso had a bounty on them, which could cause the city guards to attack them. At first, I assigned another not wanted by the law torso to get stuff, but ended up getting greedy. I sent in our scout torso, and yeah, the guards had noticed them. This caused our not wanted by the law torso to become wanted by the law, and both them and the scout had to flee town. I decided to regroup and try again in the morning, which was a very stupid idea. This led to a torso getting knocked out outside of the city and left for dead. I tried. I really did. The scout torso was too far and too slow, and another torso had sacrificed themselves for the struggle. Oh, and to add insult to injury, a bone dog ate the corpse, including the fucking robot limbs. Well, the good news is our scout torso managed to grab their bag, which was chock full of very needed iron plates. With these iron plates, we were able to build a stone processor, as well as this giant mounted crossbow strapped to the roof of the storm house, which was nice since I was expecting someone or something to notice the outpost soon. With the stone mine and the stone processor built, we would need labor for production, so I started sending over newly limbed torsos to the outpost. It didn't take long before stuff started noticing the outpost. First, it was a random homeless man who chased us around the stone mine while we tried to shoot him with a mounted crossbow. Then a giant pissed off cricket came in and ripped him to pieces. Then it started chasing us around the stone mine. Well, turns out, shooting a giant cricket is easier than a random homeless man. And then the worst possible thing happened. The tax man noticed us. You see, this entire time, we had been inside the boundaries of the United Cities, one of the major factions active in Kenshi, who can easily be described as feudal capitalists who hate poor people and love forced labor. Oh, they also like taxes. Lots of taxes. Since we had settled on United Cities territory, they sent a taxman out to, you guessed it, make us pay taxes. Not gonna lie, fellas, I paid. It was only 3,000 cats, and I decided to consider it more of a bribe so we wouldn't be beaten into the sand, but I was still pretty annoyed about it. Yeah, this is going in the book. After that, I decided I was having enough of all these uninvited guests waltzing in and started playing out a wall on day 11. It was going to be quite big, as I wanted to surround all the ore deposits so torsos could mine uninterrupted. This was definitely going to take a while, and it was going to be expensive, but once it was done, we should be pretty safe from anything short of a raid. Oh, talking about raids, shortly after the taxman left, a slaver raid party started heading towards us. I decided to run for the hills since we didn't have anything to steal, and they couldn't capture us if we weren't there. This actually worked, and they left soon after arriving. I really needed to get that wall up. In the meantime, I set up another storm shack and put up a bunch more mounted crossbows on it. Since our torsos were mostly naked, unarmed, and had zero combat skills, our best chance at defense was just pincushioning anything that bothered us. This usually worked pretty well, aside from the friendly fire and the occasional workplace accident. I also set up a more advanced research bench on the first floor and moved our researcher out to the outpost. I also gave him a name, Meet Torsiso. He is going to be quite important to our struggle, as every technology researched gives us better and better stuff, and I really wanted to be able to produce limbs in-house. I had developed a clear vision for how to complete our goals and spent the next week working towards them. I would expand the outpost industry to produce materials for the wall, liberate limbs and repair kits from the robotics store to feed and limbify our torsos, and pincushion anything that tried to shank us. By the next week, the outpost had grown considerably and was beginning to bustle with production. The wall was starting to seriously shape up, and our limb torso count was slowly but surely rising. However, we were nearing a limitation. Researching advanced technology would require ancient science books, engineering research, and even AI cores, which we could not purchase in most cities. We would have to explore the ruins of the old world to find these artifacts. We will need a specially made torso for this purpose, one who could carry a lot of stuff and still move very fast. Meet Torbago. This very special torso was fitted with top-tier robotic limbs. His scout legs would allow him to move at incredible speeds, his arms gave bonus to thievery, and he had a big bag for stuff, for which he was named. When he wasn't exploring ancient death traps, he would also be our expert thief liberator, and would be our main torso managing the torso camp in Heft. Torbago's first mission would be to find us some ancient science books. We needed them if we wanted to make our own limbs, and so we departed to the Floodlands. As you can probably guess from the name, the Floodlands are a giant flooded land. Amazing, I know. With some low-risk opportunities for science books. Usually, most old world ruins are overrunning with some sort of threat, be it robot crabs or skin spiders, but here in the Floodlands there was a few safer ruins to explore that could have stuff. So, let's go exploring. Since Torbago moved so fast, it was not long before we found something. A tower which, wasn't really a ruin since there was a robot dude living here. No books either, so we kept moving. We spotted another tower, this one actually abandoned, and inside it even had science books. 4 in total, which would be a great start for our research. With that, Torbago headed back to the outpost, but passed by an ancient lab which I couldn't help but check out. Oh yeah, those robot crab things? The place was infested with them, so Torbago got the hell out of that one. Thanks to Torbago's incredible speed, he was back the next day. We immediately put the books towards Tech Level 4, giving us access to advanced technology. This technology demanded even more science books, so Torbago was sent back out to find more. While this was all going on, the wall was finally nearing completion. On the morning of day 22, the final section of the wall was built, and we completely encompassed our territory. No longer could random homeless people or giant crickets wander inside. There was, however, one little fucky-wucky I made. The gate was completely borked. I had tried a fancy design that would force attackers into a funnel, in which a dozen crossbows would fire on them, but turns out I completely screwed it up. After reviewing the design, I noticed I could just build in the water, using the ocean as a moat. Since swimming is extremely slow, this would mean any attackers would just get bogged down and be helpless to our crossbows. It would mean the wall would take a little longer to complete, but the result would be worth it. After fiddling around with the gate design, I checked back in on Torbago, who had found an ancient library that was infested with blood spiders. What the fuck? Yeah, no, left that shit alone. So, we trade out one hellscape for another. Welcome to the Deadlands. It's constantly raining acid, there's lightning strikes everywhere, and a bunch of wandering, angry robot crab things. Nice. Who would want to live here? Turns out, a bunch of skeletons. No, not those things, but rather a race of humanoid robots that were camping out away from humans. This is actually a pretty big find since the city of robots had a special store known as the Scrap House. It had a variety of high-tier weapons, and even some ancient science books for sale. It also had a lot more security than I was used to. That did not, however, stop me from trying to liberate some science. We managed to liberate 6 ancient science books as well as some engineering research before being forced to flee town. While fleeing, we bumped straight into another ruin, which was locked beyond our skill set. I tried bashing down the door, which was a pretty stupid idea since acid was still pouring from the sky, but then this happened. Hello there, swarm of robot people. Since they opened the door, Torbago searched the place and found even more science books. With these books, we should have enough to finally research making our own limbs. I was pretty happy about this and sent Torbago back in the direction of the outpost. Once Torbago got back and offloaded the science hall, I immediately went to begin research for the limbs. So it turns out, we had the tech this entire time. Why? I suppose our starting scenario gave us the technology. I had partially noticed this much earlier back in the Stormhouse in Heft. Well, I guess no big deal. With this information, I started setting up our own robotics workshop. A bit ago, I built a bug house that should be the perfect fit. It would take a while to set up and be very hungry for labor and resources, but if it means being able to build our own limbs, sign me the hell up. At this point, our outpost was doing extremely well. Our farms were flourishing, production was overflowing, and we were starting to produce high-end items like steel, electrical components, and even dabbling in making our own weapons. Heck, I even started building a dojo to begin training our torsos. However, others had also noticed this prosperity, and soon we got our first serious raid. Reavers. These guys were pretty intimidating, as they had the numbers, the training, and the equipment. They would be the first real test of our new defenses. When they arrived, the moat worked perfectly. A single-file line of swimming ducks came under barrage from our mounted crossbows. What didn't work perfectly was our gunner's aim, allowing the Reavers to get to the inner gate. I was prepared for this and sent every torso not on a crossbow to repair the gate. With everyone fixing the gate, we were able to repair it as fast as it was being torn down. The Reavers did manage to pop it open for a second, long enough for a few raiders to slip through, but we fixed it fast enough to slam it back down. The raiders that got inside didn't last long, since I was able to distract them long enough for the crossbows to turn and shoot them in the face. Most of the raid was still outside the gate and getting blasted by the crossbows. Before long, most of the Reavers were converted to pincushions, and the remaining Reavers began to retreat. We had won. It wasn't perfect, but our defense could easily be improved. With the raid defeated, I considered our outpost to have proven itself. It was finally time to start moving the rest of the torso still in Heft to here. Robotic limb production was starting to ramp up as well, so we would finally be able to limb torsos entirely in-house. The tactic I was going to use to bring all the torsos to the outpost was that every time a torso got their limbs, they would also pick up another torso and bring them along to the outpost. If any of them were attacked along the way, which some were, Torbago was on call to assist. Once torsos actually got to the outpost, they would be placed in this bug house that was constructed the night before. For the next several days, this would be my main focus, since if we could get all the torsos behind big, strong walls, I could consider that a win. As the bug house filled up with torsos, I decided to include some amenities to make the place comfortable. Slowly but surely, Heft was emptied to torsos, and on the 35th day of our struggle, there was only one torso left in Heft. Torbago was sent to honor this torso, this turning of the tide. The torso camp in Heft was finally empty. Torbago went home with the torso in tow. On the 35th day, the last torso was delivered to safety. It was a monumental moment, but also one of remembrance, for all the torsos who had lost their lives on the path to torso civilization. Of the original 100 torsos, 87 remained. After a long and painful struggle, we had finally created a place of safety where torsos could be torsos. We had strong walls, expansive fields, overflowing production, a high-tech robotics workshop, and even a dojo. Our outpost was truly something. You know, this entire time, I had never actually named our outpost, but I had decided on one. Our outpost, nay, our civilization, shall be named Torsotopia. For now, our story ends here. Kenshi is quite the amazing game, and as usual, it's available on Steam at the price point of 30 American smackaroos. But it does go on sale occasionally, and if you like the idea of getting beaten up brutally in the desert, well hey, this game's for you. Well, that's all, and hey, thanks for watching.
Hey, I'm showering here.
Hey, what's going on? Zombies! Ah, ah, ah!